Okay, we're live. Tim Blankenship here with divorce661.com. Today we are here with Dr. Ray and Jean. They co-founded Lighthouse Emotional Wellness Center, a counseling center in the Chicagoland area. Have worked with thousands of couples. Both Dr. Ray and Jean hold master's degrees in clinical psychology, and Dr. Ray has an additional doctorate in clinical psychology. And are co-hosts of their own podcast called Couples Synergy, Real Couples, Real Stories, and co-authored a book entitled Good Boundaries, Great Relationships. So really happy to have you guys on. What I want to talk to you about is, so people know what we're getting into, is what is the number one problem couples complain about in their relationships? Why can traditional marriage counseling actually damage a marriage? What does healthy conflict look like in a relationship? And why can traditional marriage counseling actually damage a marriage? Plus other random questions I will come up with as we get along. I want to talk about your coaching program, the book you wrote, and all that good stuff. And the reason I wanted to get you guys on is I handle amicable divorce cases in California, and so many of the people calling, not that I ask them why they're getting a divorce, but those that offer that information, many of them have no idea other than to say they're unhappy. And with the initials and letters behind your name, I thought you guys would have a lot of information to share regarding that. Maybe we could save a few relationships. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us on your podcast.
This is wonderful. Thanks.
Yeah. What did I miss in that introduction? Please.
I think you got everything on it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things.
So we are done.
We are also co-founders of Couples Synergy, which is also a separate coaching company.
Okay. That's different than Lighthouse Emotional Wellness?
Correct. Lighthouse Emotional Wellness is a counseling clinic. It is in the Chicagoland suburbs. It services Chicagoland suburbs and also the whole state of Illinois. And we are co-founders of the Lighthouse, still managing the Lighthouse as well.
Okay. How are those two programs different?
So when you think about traditional counseling, you go to your insurance, you look up a counselor, and they give you references on who to go to. It is a medical clinic, considered a medical clinic. We do individual counseling. It is where we founded our couples program, our 90-day program that we created to work with couples. And it is also where we founded our family program called Family Synergy Therapy.
So that's specifically family. So you'd be working with both parties?
Correct. So all of our therapists there, clinicians, they work with couples. They also work with families and also individuals. And
what kind of things are you guys assisting with there versus, say, the couple synergy?
It's interesting. You're talking about how couples really can't find words to describe why they're really getting divorced.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's not a lot of training in marriage counseling. So a lot of therapists can't define it either. Even why people come, everyone has the buzzword. We're here to work on communication. And communication has nothing to do with vocabulary. We don't sit and teach people vocabulary, but the real breakdown is somewhere inside a person between their head and their heart, and they don't know how to resolve that. And so we created a method. It's a 90-day program to help people learn how to reconnect to themselves and their partners in a way they have no idea actually exists. And one of the main reasons is because all of our relationship templates is parent-child. That's our first relationship. And then when we show up in a partnership relationship, we still show up as parent-child. And we flip-flop. And so we don't know how to resolve it because of that power differential. And so both people have to do their part to be the adult in the relationship and not to seek their needs being met like a child, or withholding and rejection of a parent like the adult. And that's a big part of what we do to help people in our coaching method, which is it's not traditional therapy, it's a program.
So when you're talking about the parent-child and then that reversing, that would be like myself as a child to my parents, and then now a role as a parent to my children. Did I get that right?
A role as a parent to your spouse.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you're the daddy, she's the little girl, or she's the mommy, you're the little boy.
And all relationships start out that way. because
Really? That's
relationship
fascinating.
our first relationship that's role modeled to us is parent-child. So when we get into a committed partnership, we start out doing that. We start out with that dance of parent-child. And so the goal of every relationship is to evolve and grow into an adult-adult relationship, but most couples are not taught how to do that. They don't know how to evolve and grow into that. And so a lot of couples stay stuck in that.
And then they leave as a rebellious child to the partner who's been parenting them, or vice versa. The child that won't behave, I've been parenting.
And that transitions to the marital relationship in the same fashion.
Correct.
Mhm.
That is interesting. So I'll throw a curveball at you. It may not be a curveball, but is that like I'm just guessing here. Is it like the men who, we needed our moms now have our wives? Is that the dynamic? Like our wife is,
So
we're
it's
waiting
not
to kind of,
necessarily,
It's both directions.
gender
is it?
based.
Okay.
Okay. What really happens is more of this power differential that occurs in the relationship, where one person is acting out the rebellious child, the other person's acting out the parent, admonishing, criticism, demands, that sort of thing. And then sometimes it flips. And then the person that was occupying the child role now occupies the adult role. And couples will do that for years. They will do it for the entire relationship, until they figure it out.
It's very automatic and unconscious that we do this. It's almost miraculous how we will choose a person who knows our relationship dance. And so if I'm someone that was raised in a family where I didn't really speak up and there was a lot of, not talking about things, it's often that you attract a partner who wants to do all the talking and doesn't let you talk, or vice versa,
Interesting.
something like that. And what we want to do is disrupt those patterns and teach them a different way of relating that has nothing to do with that. It's an empowered way of relating, so that the resentment goes away and the ownership of the responsibility of the problem is squarely on the individual's shoulders, not on the partner. And as people we see out, we don't see like this. And so oftentimes when a couple comes to work with us, they are very full of all the ideas that their partner needs to change, but not what they need to do.
Hmm.
And they can't see it. And so
And
that's really what we're doing, is helping them see their piece where their power is.
And you were talking about communication, kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you said unspoken communication, or I think you used the word withholding. It seems that there is lack of communication just in general, but usually the withholding, maybe upset in lack of understanding, and as far as our behavior being more apparent, in frustration versus just coming out and telling your spouse what, how you feel, or how that's making them feel.
There's a whole complexity of dynamics that occur in relationships, and that's why it's so difficult. It is the most challenging relationship we will ever have, as a human being. A lot of people opt not to have any committed partnerships because it's so difficult, and what we do when we are assessing a couple, we are looking at it from different categories: yellow, blue, red flags, and green flags. Green flags are positive relationship behaviors. But, couples start out in love. We have yet to meet a couple that wasn't in love on their wedding day. But somewhere along the way, what happens is that they start demonstrating behaviors, protecting themselves, guarding themselves, not being vulnerable because they don't want to be hurt. That risk of being abandoned and rejected is something that grows over time as you are with a person, as you invest more and more in the relationship. So, couples start to do their little dance of coping mechanisms and protecting themselves from having that happen. And so the problems that occur in the beginning, they start to grow and start to increase over time. So they go from yellow flags, which are behaviors of not investing in the relationship, to blue flags. And that's where maybe they start withholding, they start keeping secrets, they start doing things that are putting the relationship into a code blue. And then if it continues to grow and escalate, they can get into red flags where now they start doing some behaviors that are really, detrimental, and damaging to the relationship.
Gotcha. Are people, and obviously people are coming to you guys when you do this assessment in different stages of these flags, as you referred to them. Are people identifying that they're having marital problems, and that's where they are then reaching out to you guys?
Yeah, there are certain questions that we ask, that gives us an understanding of the health of the relationship and kind of what category they fall into. If someone is in a red flag category, that requires a very different type of approach than someone who is falling in a yellow flag category.
One of the important things is that people feel the secondary emotions much quicker. Those other protective emotions of anger, frustration, anxiety, and they want to fix that. But that's not the problem. That's just the light on the dashboard. What's underneath are the more vulnerable emotions: hurt, sadness, fear. And that's the place where you can heal stuff, but they're not aware of that. And so they want to fix what we call the issue. The issue is, I want my house clean and you leave dishes in the sink, whatever that is. Well, we had this one couple we were working with. It was really interesting. We were talking with him about why that was so important to him, the dishes, and what did he learn as a child. And his life experience when he was 5 years old, his mother passed away and left behind a father and 2 other boys. So the house went from being organized to chaos. And so his way of coping with that was to go around and straighten things up instead of the grief that he was not expressing and nobody in the house was expressing. And so it's that kind of thing, that there's these connections back to life events that haven't been tended to, and we don't really know that there's that connection, that the dishes in the sink meant something really horrible might happen.
Yeah. When excuse me, when people come in to see you guys, what does that normally look like from your client's perspective? Is one spouse saying, "Hey, we need to go see someone because they've noticed something in the relationship"? Is it both of them? And I don't want to call it fault, but is there actions that they can take to make their situation more successful on both sides, or is it usually one-sided?
We always work from the premise that each person has contributed equally to the condition of the relationship. And so there isn't ever one person more fault than the other. And the relationship only changes if each person takes ownership responsibility for what they contribute to that relationship.
There's either 2 winners or 2 losers. And I'm sure you see that in the work you do. Nobody feels like they won when they go through a divorce. Like they won, the other person lost. It's just a brutal, transformative process to go through. And most couples that come in, they're both unhappy and they are both don't know what to do. And they typically still have some positive feeling toward their partner, but they're just really tired of feeling miserable and being stuck, and they really want to figure out what to do. And I think the most surprising thing for couples who come to see us, and we hear this from the testimonies people have given us, that they came in thinking we were going to pick a side and that we were going to pick their side. And they didn't realize that we didn't pick a side, because that's not going to help the relationship. And we want them to do their own work. And that, I think that's the surprising thing, that people don't know, that we have work as individual people first.
So it's not you telling them, it's you guiding them through what would end up being like self-discovery. Would that be a good example?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
Awesome.
Yeah, each person, the research actually shows that couples wait a minimum of 6 years before they actually seek outside help.
Really?
So you can imagine how much, how many bad habits they've developed in 6 years. and they're just ingrained in this really negative and toxic dynamic. And what our job is to break that habit, break that pattern, and teach them new ways of interacting with each other.
No, that's good. I wanted to get into some of the questions we spoke about earlier. What is the number one problem couples complain about in their relationship? Maybe we could start there.
They complain about sort of the one they complain about, of course, is communication. But the one we identify as even worse than communication is the relationship is starving. If we ask them, how much quality time do you spend together on average in a week? No screens, no kids, no other people, just the two of you having fun, doing something new, or, just hanging out together. Their answer is usually less than 1 hour a week. And
Really?
so the relationship is hiding amongst friends, amongst family, or independently, and it's not being fed at all. And that is the bigger problem. So when you look at the work of like the 5 love languages, that book is really about make deposits into your relationship. It's not about conflict resolution or growth or healing. It's simply about that. And so people are really starving as people in their own lives. They're not taking good care of themselves, and they're putting their relationship way on the back burner, and they're overwhelmed and busy and really kind of miserable in life with all the have tos and not so much want tos.
And what do you consider that 1 hour? You said no screen time, so I'm assuming that means you're not watching TV. So much of this could be masked as actually being together when it's really not that one-on-one time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Some couples will say, well, we go and work out at the gym together, and they count that as quality time. Well, it's not. You're on one machine, your spouse is on another machine. You're not really interacting. And so quality time really is that one-on-one interaction without other people, because other people become then a distraction. Some people say that, oh yeah, we took the kids out for dinner. Well, that's great. That's family time, but it's not couple time. And if a couple is not working on the relationship, then what happens is that distance naturally occurs between the two of them. And when distance grows, what fills that spot or that gap is resentment. Now you start having these assumptions about what your spouse is doing and what they're not doing, and you start making them out to be a monster. And that is just a natural thing that occurs when you don't spend time with another person, when you don't connect with them, when you don't bond with them, right? So you're either growing together or you're growing apart.
One thing we noticed when we started hiking is a very strenuous activity that leads to a lot of frustration. The quote is, off to the mountains I go to lose my mind and find my soul. And what we notice when you get to that point of frustration, your automatic reaction is to blame something. And who are you going to blame? You're going to blame your partner. The thing could have nothing to do with your partner, but that's who you're going to blame. And that's what happens in life because, we have bills to pay, we have kids, it gets difficult. And when we feel that sense of powerlessness because of life, it's so easy to turn on our partner. And we don't do that to our friends. Typically, we don't do it to our kids. It's our partner we do it to. And then we get this idea that if I could just get my partner to change, I'll be okay. And that never is the case. And what we see when we've worked with people over long periods of time with the couples that actually went to divorce is one person would stop doing their work and the other person would stay stuck in it in doing the work. And it's usually the person who is getting left that did the work.
Mm.
And the person doing the leaving went and recreated it with someone else within a few years.
So you mentioned hiking. I'm assuming that counts as couples time. Is there other examples you guys can provide of what that looks like?
Ballroom dancing, being face to face and looking in your partner's eyes and moving together. That's a great way to bond. Doing a photo shoot, where you're looking and smiling and the photographer is trying to find that essence of love between you. That's another really great one.
When we look at a mother and child and the bonding behaviors that happen, there's this eye gazing that is occurring. There is, this proximity. There is physical touch. And so all of those behaviors are bonding behaviors that couples need to do and nurture in their relationship to count as quality time. And so doing new and fun activities, that is also something that counts, because it's not something that's rote and repetitive. It's something that is a new experience that both people in the relationship are experiencing together. And it just adds to, memories. And, we know that if we spend time with someone and we have memories with a person, then we feel closer to them and we're bonded.
Gotcha. So that's interesting. It's really that one-on-one, no distraction. I mean, maybe not even going out to dinner then, with the distraction of other folks in the room and waiter coming by and all that.
When sometimes we give an assignment for a couple to go out on a dinner exercise, and there's some questions and things that we want them to talk about over dinner, but we tell them, make sure that you go to a place you've never been before. Also, make sure that you are seated in a place in the restaurant where there are no TVs around, so you can't be distracted by that, and put away the phones. The phones should not come out during dinner as well.
We also have them order one dish at a time and share it, so they're both having that experience at the same time.
Good little tactics there. I like it. So not all conflict is bad, I would imagine. You guys made a note to say, what does healthy conflict look like in a relationship? Can you talk about that?
Conflict that has a resolution, or conflict that moves a couple forward into growth and evolving as a couple, is healthy conflict. All right. And I know it's just kind of a very general and vague term, but
Sure.
Most often couples get stuck in the same cyclical conflict where they're arguing over and over and over about the same thing. And excuse me. So we use the analogy of an iceberg. 15% above the water, 85% under the water. And when couples are stuck in that cyclical conflict, they're typically arguing about the 15% above the water. Right. You said that you were going to call me when you left work, and you didn't, and you're late. You're always late. I can't ever count on you. That's the 15% above the water. But when they are, and when we teach them this about being able to get to the 85% under the water, what is the conflict really bringing up? What is it connected to? And these are deeper hurts. These are deeper wounds that each person brings into the relationship, that if not attended to and not healed by each other, they're just going to continue to argue about that 15% above the water.
According to John Gottman's research, healthy couples and unhealthy couples fight exactly the same. They say things they don't mean, they name call, they slam doors. And the reason for that is we all fight with our hindbrain, that reptilian brain that's reactive, that feels unsafe. And the difference between healthy and unhealthy couples or conflict is that healthier couples, once that part of the brain settles down, they start doing something that he calls repair attempts. I want to fix this. I want things to be different. I want to fix it with you. That those kind of things that lead for a possibility of change. And one thing that's fairly unique to human beings in the last 40, 50 years, and the divorce rates kind of show it, is we don't allow much time for contemplation. We don't allow ourselves to really reflect on our lives anymore. We just go from distraction to distraction to distraction. So we don't really understand why we're so reactive. What is it about your partner being late that is so painful for you? And there is something, and that's a better question than make sure you always come home on time, because then it won't make me feel bad. It's a deeper issue than that we're never getting to, because we're just running and rushing through life.
So that goes back to that 1 hour a day. That was a day, or was that a week? Was that a day?
The research says 5.5 hours a week.
Okay. Got you. And then, so with that, I'm sure that plays a part in that. Obviously, the 85% portion of the iceberg. When you guys mentioned that, I'm a retired LAPD officer, and I remember in our initial academy, they had someone come in and say, you guys are going to get into a very demanding job. And, obviously the divorce rate is very high with what we do with, night shifts and just what we deal with. And they didn't use the iceberg theory, but it reminded me, I haven't thought of this in a long time, that every time, you do something that just upsets your spouse, they put a marble in the jar. And one day that jar will get full. And then that's, that is your divorce. So kind of similar to what you said, it made me laugh when you guys brought up the iceberg theory.
Yeah, these are wounds that couples don't attend to. And, the kicker is that if they don't figure this out within that relationship, they will divorce and they will go and repeat it in another relationship.
And they'll bring their marbles with them.
Perfect. Perfect. So that said, what are some obvious red flags that someone could look for? And I didn't realize until you guys mentioned, you guys kind of use this flagging, yellow, blue, green, or I forgot your colors, but yellow, red, orange, maybe. But red flags, I thought of as red flag, but you guys are talking on your site like red flags. I'm assuming that was more personal to your coaching. What can people look for that might be a red flag in their relationship?
Well, red flags are very blatant. So these are really toxic behaviors. There's maybe physical abuse going on, or there's an active substance abuse problem that's going on.
Affairs.
An active affair that's going on, right? So that is, if you didn't see the problems up until then, we need to get some better glasses here, right? Because the yellow flags really are the ones that couples need to start looking out for. And, this is where, maybe they are, they're not spending time together, first of all, right? They are not intimate with each other. They are spending more time with the kids or having more relationship with the kids than they are with each other. They are spending more time at work, and they haven't been on a vacation together, maybe since their honeymoon, just the two of them. These are behaviors where there's a lack of investment in the relationship.
So they typically love each other.
Yeah, they typically love each other, and they can justify not having that time. Couples will say, well, we don't have enough time. The kids need this. My parents need this. My job is demanding. And so it's all very justifiable. It just wears at the relationship over time.
So we think about that like erosion. So whatever the bond was there in the beginning when they were dating and having fun and doing all that stuff is eroding. Those are yellow flags. The blue flags are like code blue. These are things that are killing the relationship. Things like not being open about what you're doing on social media, or hiding money, those secret keeping, talking to people of the opposite gender about intimate things in the relationship, bringing other people in closer to you than your partner is. So they're not direct offenses like an affair or an abuse, but they keep your partner on the outside, and that is going to kill the relationship.
Do you guys, and this is a question I've had before, do you see your clients, does the relationship change, or is the situation different, whether it's a stay-at-home mom or dad situation versus both spouses working? Is there just as much issues in those two types of scenarios, or potential issues?
There are, similar potential issues. They just might vary a little bit different. If both people are working, then they are trying to kind of balance a work life and a family. They're going to be distant because they don't really know what the other person is doing, right? They are more prone to having, close relationships with coworkers and living kind of a parallel life type of situation where each person is doing their own thing. Maybe they're taking care of the kids in shifts, right? But there's very little interaction or investment in their intimate relationship.
If you think about just the way a couple manages their finances, and when it's a person who is not making money externally and one person is making all the money, the person that's home doesn't see their value, or that the money coming in is coming in because they're home, because they're watching the kids and cleaning the house, doing all the things that two people that are both working are probably paying for. And so the two people that are both bringing money in have a more balanced partnership in terms of their belief about their power in the relationship. And so I would say that is the differentiating thing. And it's often not until a couple when there's a same parent goes through the divorce that they go, oh, I am entitled to half. But they can't feel that in their power in that relationship as much as a couple that they're both working.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought that up about the half, because we'll see, and I don't deal with this too much because we handle 100% amicable cases, but back when I worked for a law firm or with the courts, the let's say the husband was the working spouse, they would say, well, why does she get half? I earned this on my back, my efforts, it's my income. And it's what you said. It's because, but for in this scenario, the wife being home allowed the husband to go out and work and promote and do all the things they do. So it can be an interesting, completely opposite thought process in that way.
And that really just shows the disconnect that has happened, over a long period of time, where, they are thinking from the perspective of mine. This is mine, and not yours
Or ours.
or ours. And that's the big factor there that is always present when couples are so disconnected, is that they're not working on investing on the us. It is mine and yours, his and hers, but it's not ours.
Talking about finances, what are you guys seeing with couples and how they handle them? We have a good percentage. I'd probably put it as high as 25% of our clients going through divorce where they never shared their finances. They never shared a bank account. They never shared, they have no idea what each spouse has in their 401ks, or even if they even have one. They buy their own cars. And if there's a family home, usually they're each contributing either, half to the payment or their percentage based on maybe their incomes. But I've seen all kinds of very interesting, I don't know if it's even called non-standard, financial relationships with their spouse. What are you guys seeing? I'm sure that's perhaps an indicator, and correct me if I'm wrong, of something maybe already amiss.
Yeah, that's the us that we're talking about. And, the point of being in a long-term relationship with another human being is to witness their life. And if each person's coming in protecting their own, and it's typically done from that place, I don't want anyone to know because I don't want to be risked. I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't know what's going to happen. And when you don't take risk together, you can't bond together. And I recently saw a statistic that the greatest success of long-term relationships are young couples getting married and potentially not even living together before they got married. So that old-fashioned, get married at 19, 20, 21 years old before you have anything, and growing that together. And, their thing was, people who are older have already walked away from plenty of relationships. They've already been intimate with plenty of people that they've fallen in and out of love with. So that's an option. But the young people who maybe that's the only person they've ever dated and the only person they've been intimate with. And so they have more of an investment in that, and not the thinking of, well, I can just find somebody else. And so the older couples aren't really getting married, or they're not blending their lives, like the financial piece you're talking about.
You were talking. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the generation that has the highest divorce rate are the boomers currently, and the generation that has the lowest marriage rate are the millennials. And that generation, what we're seeing is that they are not getting married. They're cohabitating. They do own assets together, but they leave like this back door that if something happens, right? That they can leave and they can take their finances with them. They keep everything separate,
Yeah.
right? And the generation Gene's talking about is then, the Generation Z, which is we are seeing now, getting married earlier and also starting at the same place in life.
So you're saying millennials are getting married later. Gen Z is getting married earlier than the millennials?
Yeah,
Mhm.
and millennials, if they get married at all.
And the
Interesting.
millennials really witnessed the most amount of divorce with the boomers. So their parents were the boomers that were going through these divorces. So they don't
Oh,
want to put
interesting.
themselves through that. And they have
Fascinating.
that fear.
They witnessed that.
Hmm. And
And my
the Gen
daughters,
Zs are being raised by the statistic is 60% of kids do not live with both their parents. They either live with a parent with a step parent or a single parent, or they go back and forth between two.
that would make sense. I was going to mention my daughter's 26, so I don't know what that generation that puts her in, but she's following in what sounds like your millennial group, where she's again 26. She just moved into an apartment with her boyfriend for like the last year, but we're seeing that across the board. Her age group doing exactly that. Not, I mean, they're taking it slow, but yeah, definitely. My wife. I think I was 22, and my wife was 21 when we got married, and just kind of babies immediately, and kind of how it used to be. But yeah, that dynamic has completely changed.
Absolutely. They have the lowest marriage rate and they have the lowest divorce rate because of that
Oh,
reason.
There's a term called sliding versus deciding.
uh,
And so probably you decided to ask your wife out. You decided to ask her to marry you. You decided to have a wedding. You decided to have children. And these people now are like, well, my lease is up. It's kind of convenient. Let's just sort of move in together. But it isn't like, I love you. I am committing to you. I want to be with you. It's sort of like, let's wait and see what happens. And the sad part about that is you have all of the vulnerability, but none of the certainty.
now
Your
that's
heart's going to break either way. It's you can't protect
mm,
yourself from that, but you don't have a committed person that is also saying, yes, I'm in this with you when it gets tough. And that piece is really important, that if you don't have that, because it gets tough, all marriages, all relationships get tough. And if you're able to grow beyond that, there's a richness that is the most incredible thing we can do as human beings, or the greatest amount of pain if it all falls apart.
so.
So we kind of think about it like Chex Mix. You can pull your peanuts and the cereal out, but if you bake a cake, you can't pull out the eggs and sugar. It just breaks.
Makes sense. So just so I understand, with the millennials, in my mind, I didn't realize they were making those decisions in that way. Like, with just going back to my daughter, I don't know if she falls into this exact category, but it seems financial in a way. Like, they'd like to get a house, but with housing costs being so high and interest rates being so crazy, they kind of want to be more established before they, take it to the next relationship, or next, elevating the relationship from, from what they're now boyfriend, girlfriend, to engaged, to then being married. Is there outside factors that are affecting this that you guys are seeing?
Well, those decisions that they're making from that place, it's all justifiable. It all makes sense, right? But when is the right time to get married?
Yeah.
When is the right time to have kids? There is really no right time. And so when you think about it, when you guys got married, you jumped, and you had faith that you guys were going to make it through. And that's the thing, the millennial generation, they're trying to make decisions from a place of logic and reason, but they are not listening and following their heart.
I think another contributing factor is our school systems. Our school systems start prepping kids when they're in kindergarten to ultimately get educated in higher education and make a lot of money and have a great job, but we're not really so concerned about relationship skills. And a lot of kids that are millennials, they didn't have the freedom to go out and play. There was a lot of fear-based things, and kids today are almost 100% in front of an adult. And they have very expensive hobbies like hockey and cheerleading and dance and all these things that are thousands of dollars, and they're traveling all over, but they don't have to deal with the kid next to them. They don't have to go figure it out. There's always an adult intervening, whether it's a coach or a parent. Play dates involve parents. They don't involve just the kids. When we were kids, we had to go out and play and we had to figure it out. And if you had a problem with your friend, your parents said, go work it out. And you had to learn how to deal with your peers. So we're really only dealing with our adult supervisors and getting acknowledgement for how we perform either in school or in a hobby. We're not getting kindness or thoughtfulness or other things that are really important relationship skills. And so you bring that to a relationship. What can I get if I perform versus what can I give? And it's the what can I give that creates a really rich life. And that's what reduces the anxiety and depression that so many of these people now have, because they have such a disconnect in their life from everyone. There's such a distrust.
That all makes sense. I wanted to, you guys talk about why traditional marriage counseling can damage a marriage. So I want to start there and then kind of dovetail into what you guys do, and then talk about some of your coaching programs. So I know you have your couples, your synergy group. You have, I think, even a home study course. So if we could start with what your thoughts on our traditional marriage counseling, and then what versus what you guys are doing.
Most people don't know that traditional marriage counseling has the worst success rate across the board of all therapies. And the reason is that most people, majority, I would say, of traditional marriage counselors out there, they don't have any specific training in working with a couple. In fact, all you have to do is get a master's degree and hang up a shingle, and you can call yourself a marriage counselor without ever having sat in front of a married couple before.
There's no specialty in it.
There's no specialty, no certification that's necessary or needed. And a lot of therapists are coming out of school. They are, they've never been in the workforce. They went from a bachelor's degree to a master's degree, and they're not even married themselves. And now they are in front of a couple, and they are taught, very basic book skills on how to help a couple talk to each other when they really have not even had that life experience. Another factor that occurs in traditional marriage counseling is that there is a gender bias that occurs right from the beginning. If it's a female therapist, now there's 2 women in the room and 1 man. If it's a male therapist, it's 2 men in the room and 1 woman. And so there's always an imbalance, and it creates a gender bias. What also occurs is that the therapist is naturally pushed into the role of being a referee. And so each person of the relationship, they try to get the therapist to see their side, to support their side, and that puts the other person on the defense. So 9 times out of 10, couples are walking out of a session feeling slighted, feeling more in competition with each other. And now they have to fight the next time to get the therapist to get on their side.
That makes sense.
And, the session will start something like this. So tell me about your week. And they instantly throw out their latest conflict and leave feeling horrible. And that's never the feeling we want people to have. That's the pattern that we want to disrupt. And so, our method is, I think it's hard to replicate because we are a married couple. We've been married for 25 years. We had to live through this stuff, and we had to keep choosing this, as opposed to if we had chosen something else, we wouldn't be as committed to the couple sitting in front of us to do the hard work. And So, how do you have 25 years of life experience and 25 years of working with thousands of couples and watching them go through it? And so what we do that's different is we put those issues, what we call issues, even if they're big ones, like someone had an affair, to the back until we help them become different people. And then we bring it forward for healing,
Wow.
as opposed to sit there and creating rules or I statements or some of the typical things that you'll hear of traditional marriage counseling.
So you guys are able to disrupt, and I think you answered my question as I was writing down the question. And how are you disrupting that? It's by you guys each being in the room, or however you guys do that, so there is not that imbalance.
Correct. Right from the beginning, because we are a married couple and both genders are being represented, the gender bias is eliminated. So now we can actually work with the couple versus the individual parts. Now, I do work with the husbands individually, and Jean works with the wives individually. And then we come together, the four of us, in teaching them the skills that they need in order to, change that trajectory that the relationship is on.
One of the things that we let people know is you're going to be respected whether you're in the room or not. And early on in our careers, we had to learn this the hard way, that when we are working individually with someone and we want to believe their side of the story. But what we now know is that is colored by so many things, and it's not the point. The point isn't to find a winner and a loser. The point is to find the other thing that is kindness, the other thing that is empathy, the other thing that is seeing your partner for the imperfect and wounded person that they are and helping them feel better in the world. That's our goal. It isn't to referee or find fault. That doesn't work.
You guys kind of bring the whole, what do I want to say? You're the whole package, because you were talking about therapists just need a master's degree, no experience, don't even have to be married. And there's this, and you guys have degrees like there's no tomorrow, plus the experience. There's this fairly new, coaching seems to be, people calling them marriage coaches or financial coaches, basically, like I mentioned earlier, with no letters behind their name, really just using their personal experiences as their expertise. Is there a place for those folks as well?
I think it can be both an opportunity and dangerous. So depending on someone's makeup, right? Tony Robbins is that way. But he did his work. He read every book he could find. He educated himself. He self-taught himself. But then there's other people, it's like parenting books. Well, this worked with my kid, so across the board, it's going to work. Well, of course it doesn't. So we also see that they're like, well, we went through this difficult thing and this is how we fixed it. And so that applies to everybody, which is not the case. So there is an opportunity for people who maybe are naturally gifted, but it's definitely a buyer beware.
The danger is when someone uses anecdotal experience and tries to apply it to other people in their lives. What worked for you doesn't mean it's going to work for someone else. And so, our approach is not just our own experience within our relationship, but it is research based. Everything we are teaching couples are skills that we know is necessary for them to learn in order to be able to come together, keeping in mind the specific differences that each couple brings to our sessions, right? So it is a great combination of not just our own personal experience, but also our education and research, and also our experience in the field.
This kind of leads into how we work with people. And we found that there's 3 different levels that couples really need in order to make a lasting change in their relationship. So typically we work with someone 1 hour a week, whether it's the couple or individual. And those sessions are designed to really personally help the person discover their own selves, reflect in their lives. But they're typically going from that 1 hour session right back into their life. And so it's hard to integrate that. So the other thing that we did is we created a couples weekend. We call it a relationship enhancement weekend. And this is where they stay in it without distraction from some point on Thursday to some point on Sunday. And they are not allowed to have phones on the weekend. They are 100% in, and they're making those deep deposit, that investment into the relationship, which allows that vulnerability and those secondary emotions a safe place for them to experience. And the third thing that we do is what the home study course, because there's certain things we want people to learn that they can't learn in a session because they're too emotional. We don't learn very well if we're upset. And so the home study course is the things that we've told people over and over and over again. Every couple hears what's in that home study course, because it's fundamental things that help that adult relationship shift from that parent-child relationship.
Where do you find people? Are people coming in at different? I was looking at your website. The couple to couple, the weekend intensive you're talking about. It looks like there's 2 study courses. You have a workshop. You have the podcast. What does that funnel look like for you guys? Are people coming in all different from all different places based on their needs at the time?
Yeah, I think there are certain programs that we have that are attractive to couples at different places in their life, right? Couples who are typically in the red flag category, I don't think really reach out to us much, right? The 2 demographics that we see come through the doors are couples who are young and have young kids, and they are just caught up in the rat race and over and over doing the same thing over and over again, the Groundhog Day, and feeling very disconnected. And then the second demographic are people who are empty nesters. Their kids are grown. Maybe they're not out of the house, but they're grown. They're doing their own thing now. And, the couple is looking at each other like, I don't know who you are, right? We haven't spent time together in years. And so now what are we going to do from here? And those couples, those 2 demographics, they come in at different places. They might come in because they want that personal coaching from us. Maybe they want to get away. And so they're really looking at that enhancement weekend as time away for their relationship and invest in that. So yeah, there really isn't one area that couples are coming in or a trend.
Before we end off, what didn't I ask you? Should I have asked you? Do you guys want to mention? And then we can close out by you just letting us know how folks can get a hold of you.
One thing I want to mention is that, we've talked about traditional marriage counseling. We talked about our coaching, and our approach. One thing that we want to always let people know out there is that, do your research, ask the questions that you need to in order to feel like the person that you're seeking out is going to be a good fit for you, right? Don't just go with what your insurance is submitting to you. Ask the questions of whether the person is married, how much experience have they had in working with couples, right? What is their philosophy of, working at saving the marriage or working at trying to find happiness for both of them? These are really important questions. And we do have a podcast episode on that specific, situation is, do your research and find the right guidance for your relationship.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm glad you ended with that. And what's the best way? Do you do consultations, or should they just go to your website? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, they can go to our website, couplesynergy.com, and they could sign up for a consult. We do consultations. And in those consultations, Jean and I are really asking the questions that we need in order to understand where the relationship is at and what program really would be a good fit for them where they're at.
Awesome. And are you guys mostly in-person coaching, or are you guys behind the whole Zoom and non-personal wise?
We do virtual. Sessions because we do sessions with people all over the world at this point.
Okay.
From time to time, we do go into our clinic in the Chicagoland area. And for people who are local, we are able to do in person at those times.
And the weekend, of course, is in person.
Right. Makes sense. Well, again, thanks so much, you guys, for coming on and taking this almost a full hour with me. I know the folks that watch my content, I've had really good responses to me not just talking about divorce. I've done, I think, 1,800 videos on YouTube, and I'm trying to get a lot more of this type of content out there because I think people are getting tired of the repetition of me talking about the same thing over and over again. And I just don't have this expertise or comfort level about talking about these types of things. But I do have a big following of people that I think have been wanting this content. So again, thank you so much.
Thanks for
You're
having
welcome.
us.
Thanks for having us.
Sure thing.